Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. Today we're doing the mid-year book freakout tag. I'm super excited to do this tag. I've never done it before. So far this year, I think I have read about 30 books, maybe 32, and I am very proud of that number. Really, the only reason I've been able to read so much is because of COVID. At school, I didn't have time to read. Really, I was so busy with classwork and extracurriculars and everything. My time for reading was very minimal. But then I got sent home from college, and I've been home, stuck in quarantine, with absolutely nothing to do. I've just been reading, and honestly I really enjoyed it. I finally gotten out of my reading slump, been like reading through books so quickly. We're gonna talk about a couple of them today, answer a couple questions, see how my reading life is going so far in 2020. So let's just get into it. Okay, the first question that we have is the best book you've read so far in 2020. My favorite book I've read so far this year is Chain of Gold by Cassandra Clare. Of course, if you know anything about me, you know that I'm obsessed with the Shadowhunter books. I'm obsessed with Cassandra Clare. So of course, I was so excited to read this book and I absolutely loved it. If you don't know what the Shadowhunter books are about, where have you been for the past like 10 years? There's like a million of them. So good. Just go pick one up. They're amazing. Chain of Gold follows the kids of the people in the infernal devices. So this takes place in the early 1900s. The best day I had in the spring semester of college was the day this book came out, which I think was in March. I went to my Barnes & Noble and I bought the book, and then I sat in the little cafe and I got a little drink from Starbucks, and I sat and read about half the book that day at Barnes & Noble. So that was really fun. It was a great day to relax and read this, and I flew through this book. It is so good. So far, my favorite book of the year. We'll see at the end of the year if this ends up on the list, which it probably will, because every year my favorite books list includes a Cassandra Clare book. Question 2 is the best sequel you've read so far this year. I really haven't read very many sequels. You could count Chain of Gold as a sequel in the Shadowhunter Chronicles, and if so, then this is definitely my favorite sequel, but this is the first book of its own series or trilogy or whatever it's going to be, so I'm not going to count this, and instead I'm going to show you the only other sequels I read this year, which I actually really loved. And those sequels are Arch Enemies and Supernova by Marissa Meyer. Those are the sequels to Renegades by Marissa Meyer, and I binge read this trilogy during quarantine and it was absolutely phenomenal. I loved it. It was the perfect quarantine read. It was fast-paced, it was interesting, it was fun, it wasn't too heavy, so I could just fly through these and enjoy my time. I'm super glad that I read them. Finally, they've been sitting on my TBR shelf for ages and I finally got around to them, so favorite sequels, definitely. Question number 3 is a new release you haven't read yet but want to. When I was sitting down and planning for this video, I didn't have any new releases. I could not think of anything that I've been like waiting on. I've kind of been going with the flow so far this year. So I looked up some videos of people's most anticipated releases for 2020, and now I have a lot of books that I want to read that are already released. So the one that sounds most interesting that I just heard about like 10 minutes ago is The Kingdom of Back by Marie Lu. This book is about Beethoven's, oh my god, is it Beethoven or Mozart? I don't know. It's some famous composer. It's about his sister. She wants to be recognized as a musician, but of course because of the time period, no one's taking women seriously. So I feel like it's a fantasy book and something like she makes a deal with like the devil or something. I don't know, but it sounds really, really good. Question 4 is your most anticipated release for the second half of 2020. Now, this book is kind of a guilty pleasure for me, but I'm really, really excited to read it, and that is Majesty, the sequel to American Royals by Katharine McGee. I read American Royals, I think towards the end of last year, maybe in like December, and it was so good. Wow. I can hear people talking. This is a fictionalized America in which instead of having a democracy, we have a royal family. And the royal family is descendants of Washington, of course. So this book follows the 3 kids of the royal family. There's an oldest daughter, Beatrice, and then twins, Jefferson and Samantha. Just kind of follows life and the drama of the royal American family. It is so good. I read through this in like a day. It's addicting. If you like the Selection series, you will love American Royals. Like I said, it's a little bit of a guilty pleasure pleasure. This is basically like watching a reality TV show. If you're looking for like a little guilty pleasure, super easy, fun, like enthralling read, I recommend this. And I cannot wait for Majesty when it comes out. It's gonna be so good. Looking forward to it all year. I'm actually not sure when it comes out. It either comes out in the fall or in the winter, but you know, the day it comes out, I'll be picking that up. Our next question is your biggest disappointment so far this year. And the first one, unfortunately, is The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater. I have heard such amazing things about this series for so long, so I really wanted to pick it up and see if I liked it, and I gave it a try. I read the whole book, but it just wasn't for me. It wasn't necessarily slow paced, but I felt like this entire book nothing happened. It was all building up to this one big moment that just didn't occur. So I'm guessing that that is going to be the plot for the whole series, and maybe by the last book or sometime in the middle it might happen. But I was just pretty disappointed. I felt like this was just kind of like, it wasn't really it for me. The other book I have was Sarah J Maas's new book. Oh my god, it's actually heavy. I forgot how heavy this was. And that is House of Earth and Blood. Yes, House of Earth and Blood, which I always call Crescent City because Crescent City, the name of the series, is really big on the cover. So every time I talk about this book, I just call it Crescent City and then I have to remind myself that's not actually the name. So the marketing on that kind of bugs me because I just want to call it Crescent City. Anyways, this book was a letdown. I love Sarah J Maas, obviously. Love her Throne of Glass, love A Court of Thorns and Roses. I can never say that title. But I love Sarah J Maas, really, I do. I've always enjoyed her books. I started reading them in like middle school, and they've kind of been with me from middle school all the way through college. So I was really excited to read this, but honestly, I was confused like 90% of the time in this book. And I get that it's a fantasy world and it takes a long time to build fantasy books, especially in the first book in a series, but honestly, when I'm in the last couple pages and I still am like, what is this world? Not for me. Crescent City, see, I did it again. It's freaking House of Earth and Blood or whatever it's called. This book has a very interesting fantasy world. It's totally different from anything else Sarah J Maas has written, and that this is very modern. There's modern technology. Just everything is modern except for the fact that there's fairies and demons and angels and werewolves and vampires and creatures, things. So unfortunately, I just didn't like this one as much. It mainly was the setting that bothered me. Like I said, it was just kind of a weird mix of mixing in a bunch of her typical fantasy elements but throwing them into a modern environment, and it just felt very clunky to me and kind of hard to piece together, and I felt like it didn't necessarily flow. It was really, really thick. It honestly could probably be like half this size. Overall, I still enjoyed this book, and if you like Sarah J Maas and if you like fantasy books, definitely give it a try. You might enjoy it more than I did. You win some, you lose some. I probably won't read the rest of this series. Maybe I'll check it out at the library if I get curious, but unfortunately, not a fan. Question number 6 is the biggest surprise. I actually had several books that surprised me this year that I really enjoyed. One of which was City of Saints and Thieves by Natalie C. Anderson. This book was not what I was expecting at all. It was wild. It was amazing. I really loved it. I recommend checking this out if you're into thievery and twisted plots, and it was good. I don't know what I was expecting, but I really loved it, and I would love to read more of her books. The other surprise I had was Pachinko by Minjin Lee, I think is her name. Pachinko is about a Korean family who ends up moving to Japan, and it's just kind of the family struggle, and it starts in the 1800s and goes all the way to I think 1980 or 1990, and it's just a family story. You see how they lived. They had a super poor life to begin with, and they were pretty poor still through most of it, and it was just a great insight onto how Korean Japanese relationships worked in the late 1800s through the majority of the 1900s. It was very different from anything else I've ever read, and I really enjoyed it, and I would love to read more books similar to this. The other big surprise that I had, which I love, is New Kid by Jerry Craft. This book is actually a graphic novel, and its target audience is middle schoolers. I've never read a graphic novel before, ever. In my life. Can you believe that? I'm 19 years old and this is the first graphic novel I've ever read. And honestly, it was fun. If you're scared of reading a graphic novel, don't be. It's really not that hard. You can get through a couple pages and then it's easy to read. But this, like the drawings and the art is just amazing. It's so It's so good. I read this book for my young adult literature class, which by the way is the coolest class I have ever taken in my life. If you want a video about that, let me know. One of the types of books we looked at is graphic novels and how to use graphic novels in the classroom. This book follows a young boy named Jordan Banks. He's going into 7th grade and he's really bummed out because he wants to go to this like super fancy art school because he's an artist. But his parents send him to a preppy private school instead. Jordan doesn't really fit in at this private school. There's a bunch of people who are not like him. They come from different backgrounds. They don't really relate to him at all. So it's just his struggle of trying to fit in at this middle school, trying to make friends in a place that he doesn't really fit in. I definitely recommend this. 10 out of 10. Super good. A fantastic surprise for this year. Our next question is favorite new author. This author could be new to you or a debut author. For me, my new favorite author is Christina Lauren. I read The Honeymooners a couple weeks ago and it was really good. It was just a fun, light, easy read, perfect for summertime. I really enjoyed it. I'm excited to read more of her books. Now, Christina Lauren is actually two people. What are their names? Christina Hobbs and Lauren Billings, and they write cutesy romance books together. Can you hear the music? My sister is listening to La La Land in the next room and you can hear it. Oh, also, I forgot, since I pulled this book down earlier, Natalie C. Anderson. I honestly don't know what other books she has written, but I would love to read more of her books because, like I said earlier, City of Saints and Thieves was such a pleasant surprise. It was so good, super unique, so I would love to check out more of her books. Question number 8 is newest fictional crush. And I had a hard time picking a new fictional crush. I don't think I really have anyone until I remembered this book, and I remembered literally every single character. And this book is my new fictional crush, except for Grace Blackthorne because she's a backstabbing bitch. Anywho, all the other characters in this book are my new fictional crushes. I love them all. Our main cast of characters is probably my favorite. I love Jamie and Matthew and Cordelia and Anna and Lucy and just Thomas and all of them. They're all fantastic characters, especially Matthew Fairchild. Kind of has a special place in my heart, even though he's a little bit of a mess. I love him. I love all these characters. Mwah. That actually goes along with question number 9. Who is your newest favorite character? And I think I'm gonna have to say Cordelia Carstairs from Chain of Gold. She is so badass. She made me laugh. She made me cry. She's fantastic. I love Cordelia Carstairs. Want to be just like her. Another new favorite character is Laya. Okay, her name's Delilah. She goes by Lila for short. Lila from A Darker Shade of Magic. She is just a really cool character. She wants to be a pirate and she's a thief and a pickpocket and she gets into the magic and she's a really cool character and I really like her. Our next question is a book that made you cry. And I don't think I've actually cried so far this year reading a book, but I did have some books that made me sad. And the one I want to talk about today is I Was Anastasia by Ariel Lahan, I think is how you say her last name. My mom actually has this book downstairs and I'm too lazy to go get it, so I'm just going to insert the picture. It's obviously about the story of Anastasia, the Romanov princess. This book is really cool because it has two perspectives. The first perspective is a perspective of Anna Anderson, who is the most famous Anastasia impersonator. The second perspective is Anastasia herself. Anna's story starts like at the end of her story, and Anastasia's story actually starts like the year or so before her family is murdered. So these stories go back until they kind of meet in the middle. And the whole purpose of this book, which makes it so cool, is the reader is supposed to figure out whether Anna was actually Anastasia or not. If you know the history and you've looked into the legend, obviously you know the truth. But part of the fun is kind of piecing the pieces together, completing the puzzle, and trying to decide for yourself whether Anna could have been Anastasia or not. I say this book made me cry or just sad because Anastasia dies and her whole family dies, and it's really awful that an entire royal family is murdered in the basement of a house. If you didn't know that already, sorry to spoil you, but it's history. It's like, I can't really spoil you on something that's already happened. But anywho, it was just really sad and heartbreaking to read about the royal family meeting their untimely death. But now I'm on an Anastasia kick and I've been watching the movie, listening to the musical, watched some TV shows about the Romanovs. So if there are more Anastasia related books, let me know because I really like those. On a better note, our next question is a book that made you happy. For this question, I'm gonna have to go with the Bromance book club by Lisa K. Adams. This book was just so lighthearted, so fun, just a good little sweet contemporary book, like just a make you feel good kind of book. This story follows a man named Gavin who is a professional baseball player. Gavin and his wife are having some troubles, and so far everything he's tried to get his wife back has failed. So the other boys on the team and some friends of his introduce him to their Bromance book club. And these men in this book club, they read romance novels and try out the tactics on the women they want to woo. And it's just a really cute concept. So you see Gavin throughout this book reading romance novels and trying to woo his wife back. And it's just really sweet. And I think there are actually 2 more books in the series, one of which may be out already and the other coming out later this year. I'm not entirely sure, but it was enjoyable to read as a standalone, so I recommend this. Our second to last question is the most beautiful book you've bought or received this year. And I've been looking through my shelves and I don't know. I don't think I've bought any like really beautiful books this year, which is kind of a bummer because most of them are just like not that cute. So I don't know what to choose for this one. I don't know. Okay. I actually don't know what book I want to pick for this. I'm looking at books and I have some pretty ones, like The Unhoneymooners is pretty. City of Saints and Thieves is actually a really cool cover. I mean, this is a pretty beautiful cover. This isn't like that beautiful, but it's got a picture inside. That's cool. I don't know. I really haven't bought much books this year, especially pretty ones. This is sad. I have this poetry book. I mean, that's pretty. It's not bad. She's kind of cute. We're gonna skip this question and just finish up the video. Finally, we are on to our last question, which is, I gotta look at my notebook again. Question number 13. What books do you need to finish before this year ends? My first pressing matter is to finish the Darker Shade of Magic trilogy. There are 2 more books in this trilogy. It was really good and I can't wait to read the other 2 books. So as soon as I can get my hands on them, I will be finishing this trilogy. Obviously, I need to read Majesty, which I talked about earlier. I'm excited to read that. I will definitely be reading that before this year's over. I guess I need to finish my TBR pile. I have a couple books over on my other bookshelf that I need to finish. So I guess I'll try to get around to those. They're just a bunch of like random books that I've had for a long time that I really need to finish. So my goal is to finish that TBR shelf. Chances are it won't happen because I have a bad habit of buying or borrowing or just reading books that are not from the shelf. So some of those books have been sitting there for like 2 years, so I really need to get to them. That's gonna be a big challenge for the rest of 2020. I need to finish my current read, which is Moloka'i by Alan Bernert. This is embarrassing because I can't pronounce the name of the book and I also can't pronounce the author's name. Moloka'i. I'm obviously butchering this name. It's the name of a Hawaiian island, so if you know how to say it, please let me know. Actually, I'm gonna go grab Siri. Let's look it up because this is actually embarrassing. Moloka'i. Except this says it's in Russian and that it translates to milk, but this is the name of a Hawaiian island, so obviously it's not in Russian. Let me see. I am like insulting an entire culture here. I am so sorry. Yeah, Hawaiian. Let's see. Moloka'i. So I'm currently reading Moloka'i and it is very good. I'm only 56 pages into it right now, but I know that I'll be finishing it within the next couple days because it's good so far. Moloka'i is about the leper colony in Hawaii. If you didn't know, like I didn't know before picking up this book, Hawaii had a leper colony from 1860 to 1960. For 100 years, Hawaii would ship its citizens who had leprosy to the island of Moloka'i and separate them from the rest of Hawaii. So this book deals with that piece of history. Our main character is Rachel, and at the beginning of the book, she is 6 years old when she gets leprosy. At 7 years old, she gets moved to the colony of Moloka'i. Can you imagine being 7 years old and separated from your family forever and sent to an island full of people with leprosy? That's crazy. So obviously I have to finish this book. I already know it's gonna be really great. And that's it for my mid-year book freakout tag. Thanks for watching. If you have any book recommendations for me, leave them down below. I'd love to hear what you guys are reading, and we'll see you next time.